I love Americans. A human factory nature breaching method at countries A through Z was entrenched in the colonies, southern and American. I mean, northern and southern colonies before America's founders were even born. And roles with that were influenced by internationally monitored conversations that were involved with the worse than just the North Atlantic slave trade. It was involved with the differences, racketeering method worse than war crimes that we don't have to be lawyers to discern. Having black pupils' whites of eyes, projected by the identity of all spaceless existence, as that which as that which is an extent we could discern. That comes also with its complete identity relationship to it and only increasing value of that, as means to discern where and how its identity of value progression has why and how totally different species bodies and have the same quality aspects in nature and exceptions that come with demonstrations slash demonstrations of the same thing as itself as that extent slash extents that we could discern of the complete identity of all spaceless existence, that which we could discern we have discerned since we were kids, having been replaced with Boolean logic and or by per the nature of it involved with the syntax regarding history's principles, because they have been stayed self-valued, having been abridged from nature's principles. These are principal identities of relativity to ourselves that are connected. How fish have two eyes is an identity of relativity, all kinds of things, but also to where to how we have two eyes. Not to show us that there's a God with two eyes. It shows us that the identity of all space as existence, that is not us, it is not the other species' bodies, but it is everything anyway. Therefore, it is us and the other species' bodies, while it is not us in significant ways that we must and do appreciate whether we realize it or not every moment. This is a hypervolume science that is not just connected to all things, even things made up, but distinctly from the finite and from the order of the finite. Lies the difference between that, too. Lies that, but not by any way. That same way. And as the same with the grouped and the same with the progressive. Like the value of seasons that are not even here yet, and where and how we are being and have been shown that before they get here. And to know that other people know this too. But now it is through systems tactically abridged, and where no one has the right to deny that. Everyone denies that and makes that and pretend they have free speech. That's not free speech. You guys have been changing and faking what people say as collusion slash S with predicate acts, criminally foreign influenced wire crime acts and methods, whole methods of them, including with the news, all sides of criminal and civil cases at the same time as people at and next to the relative crime scenes and body dumping spots and wars involved. You guys are collusion slash S measured and maintained, incapable of discerning how and why. If a person was born who in 1860 at the beginning of the Civil War, who died at 100 years old, they died in 1860s. In 1860. So what really caused the Vietnam War? To understand that, you have to understand what caused the Civil War. To understand that, you have to understand how James Madison's plan and the founders behind him only had means with that plan to do damage control and counter to an extent that non-distinctly, sickly, distinctly also against everybody. But if anybody mentioned how sickly, non-distinctly, they would have been sensed through all that was programmed by everyone having had roles with all locations slash S everywhere the human species body of individuals' bodies has a body, having blamed other things, others, ourselves, and then defended that as collusion slash S with the breaching method, singular. And then as a whole bunch of the methods shown means and needs to hide that and to hide from nature's demonstrations of it itself. And as per where and how it uses self-valued, how it even got and the means to keep self-valued collusion slash S against themselves. The members of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, the branches of government, and the intelligence tied to them, private and other, foreign and domestic, they never had possession of their name slash S, A through Z, used as differences, racketeering, worse than war crimes rules, self-valued. And only because a certain type of victim slash hyper victim is only allowed to be produced and simultaneously self-denied since some ancient times. Otherwise, that body is sensed, including if it is a majority of people, including if it is every single body of a country and any grouping of countries to counter what this caused and keeps, while still entertaining locations, areas, and states, collusion slash S being and having been, all sides in criminal and civil cases, and the branches of government and the intelligence and other and news at the same time. They were originally and still self-valuing sequence shifts, differences, racketeering, worse than war crimes, with their own differences and other people's differences, including religious differences, right where and how this breaching method measured and maintains clearer than day. Other things, others ourselves communicated for what our founders communicated, how our founders communicated, for us to communicate about these things. And their communications are greater than and more finite than what they said. And they said to get the Constitution unabridged and why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them. Appreciate it. So I shouldn't have to beg to get the interbranch onto paper, one name and sequence, and me from the fake conversations with them and change conversations with them and with their sources and with the news at the same time and with the intelligence tied to them, again, but foreign at the same time, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists too. Now discernible too, but it shows how through time, since before our founders were here, since its inception, there are proofs that Connecticut's news locations had roles with predicate acts with facts methods that are recorded. This is a breaching method that has all sides of criminal and civil cases, collusion slash S with all kinds of natures of organized crimes associated with the celebrities, for example, changing and faking what other people say, lying about their motivations. In other words, using truths, all truths for lies. And because increasingly the breaching method needs to screen its roles with motivations at countries A through Z. Like, for example, where and how anyone could be motivated to change and fake all the evidences that come with just having black pupils, whites of eyes, and deny the significance of that value, slash value progression, slash value progressions. Again, relative to that identity that is not anything that we could discern, but is inseparable from it, from our discernment simultaneously, slash hyper simultaneously. But again, we have our words changed and faked and lied about when we use short words properly regarding predicate acts. The celebrities have roles with acting tied to the extent of the knowledge they know, as do the names of the people of the sciences A through Z and the experts on the religions. Recorded self-value uses being and natures being and having been used remotely. Self-valuing readings of the books out of sequence. Self-valuing sequence shifts and the differences between that and its relativity slash hyper-relativity to the part that says that the Old Testament only defend here and the part that comes before it with names of the people of sciences will come together. They can't be honest about that. They can't be honest about the part that comes after it, beginning with the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which you can't be honest about good and evil if you're not going to be honest about the part that says only defend right here, where the names of the people of sciences will come together, and the part that comes before it. And nature shows how and why the names of the people will come together. But they can't be honest about either of those parts or the difference of it. And that's relative because there are three distinct parts of the hyper invisible but still discernible singular, where it has group parts of itself too, discernible simultaneously / hyper simultaneously, because of where and of how its complete identity doesn't juxtapose with matter, but part of itself values juxtaposing with matter. Part of itself is an identity relationship to itself that values not juxtaposing with matter, and part of itself is the conjunction between that, the difference of and as that, coming to, from, as, with, and for all things as itself, where and how more of a particular identity of forever nature is being generated. As that particular identity we could discern to an extent. It's showing us to value how it comes with its complete identity of relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that equally simultaneously, as part of where and of how it is showing us that there is a portion of itself that is beyond our discernment as the identity of all, as the complete identity of all space / existence, except for how that complete identity and its complete identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that distinctly, but also non-distinctly, and simultaneously / hyper simultaneously, is on the finite, distinctly from how on, as the value of the to, from, as, with, and for the value of the active, and distinctly, but also non-distinctly simultaneously, again / hyper simultaneously, as the value of coming to, from, as, why, to, from, as, with, to, from, as, with, and for the seasons that are not even here yet, but part of them is anyway, because the sciences and the seasons share an identity of value / value progression / s. Its difference is being generated, is being demonstrated to us as what is the difference between species bodies of individual bodies with all group differences and with exceptions, including like bodies as cells that replicate through cell replication. These are exception nature that come with demonstration / that's the same thing. Vaccine. So in other words, they're lying. They're on a mass scale. There are predicate acts with facts stacked into databases at each of the campus everyone went to, and there are rules with that from off the campuses being and having been influenced, and there are hyper additional roles, needs, and natures only haven't been known. Hyper additional to that, but as timed collusions / s. Like, for example, relative to where and to how people could have even be motivated and get away with it, to fake and change and leave out, what's communicated by having black pupils and whites of eyes, and where and how this is inseparable from what caused slavery. Answers proper. So what we have read about this, it's still criminally foreign influence, fact, treatment, nature, quality, aspects in nature, as criminal and ceases nature. And I'm not a lawyer, and it's not formally discerned this way, but we could, and we are shown by nature to discern it as hyper criminally foreign influence too. The northern colonies and southern colonies were sickly distinctly with slavery, but also sickly non-distinctly, because there were roles with a shared breaching method. But as shared breaching methods individually grouped it together, The countries with that had roles where they individually grouped it together, all kinds of groupings and differences with that. And then there were the ones. Then the countries like it wasn't just Spain, France, and England entrenched here before America's founders were born. And entrenched there, it's important to not leave out how they're already there, had the same thing, possession of them right through their foundings. Our founders communicated they didn't want slavery entrenched northern South. They knew fake free speech voices would step in and keep the quality aspects in nature of fact treatment, nature, criminal instances, nature of truth treatments, fact treatments, exceptions treatments, nature treatments. Yeah, because I've only have heard psychopath natures of calmness or passions and emotions, aggressions, or whatever, just any kind of passion or emotion regarding history, formally as voices speaking for the principles of history. Yeah, I've not heard the communications of James Madison and the founders behind him and his plan. See, I've replaced its value where it is inseparable from the proper answers, like what caused the evil of the presidents to be collusion with that. A breaching method gave them no choice; it would sense them through their own people. That's what the value of those laws were per science, an extent/extents plural of collusions. Manifest that way per nature. It's important to do that, but the breaching method knew they would be manifest that way. So the breaching method is also the singular there. A distinct identity of hyper invisible, but still discernible. That is not the identity that is hyper invisible, but still discernible. As that again, that shows us its body to an extent. / extents plural. In that plural part that comes with showing us the how and why we need to appreciate the word, the value of nature as a word hyper additional for identity. Because part of every identity is that semi-nature relationship to that complete identity of all space / existence that we can't discern it's but one way. Again, and how it is distinctly inseparable from all parts of itself. And distinctly, but also non-distinctly, and simultaneously / hyper simultaneously for our discernment of it. And with our answers here, we could ignore them. We could stay systems tactile as A through Z differences, as systems tactile from that which is hibernated. But it will show us with force, space, nature transfer, negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures come with demonstrations / as of Lethe, Lethe, Lethe of Hades, having more probably been a part of the science of pantheism led by the hyper-singular identity of hyper-invisible but still discernible. And how it teaches about exceptions, how and why we are hyper-additional nature, the proofs of that. We have to appreciate exception nature totally honestly. But you guys have not done that. How could you be about diversity and equality if you're leaving out how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, and there are predicate acts with facts, methods, needs, and natures behind pretending really not to realize that, and then positions upon that, by that, and the collusions with it, the collusion / as with that, upon every single body, let alone the people hurt most by that. For example, like the people in the background that we can't even see behind those stones in the huge buildings in New York City, behind rappers and rap videos. Aggression, pure. Emotions and passions are about the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous, not to leave out the smallest finite detail, and not to leave out the predicate acts with facts roles with each campus you went to that with exception nature relative to where and to how. This breaching method kept everyone self-valuing with no one self-values, but it keeps it anyway. Even though we have to do it simultaneously. But to discern the breaching method, we have to look right where everyone's guilty together or sensing for the breaching method. So that's why we're going to begin understanding and not like, oh, we're going to stack simultaneously means to discern it. But we're going to be the first principal meaning is having black people's rights of eyes and that being and having been left out of subject treatments of what slavery is about and of motivations for roles with that subject. Still, not just taught wrong, not just criminally foreign influence, tactically wrong, and delusions wrong. But that being haven't been used remotely self-valued and rolls with it, otherwise that body is sensed. So we're going to have to address how each of the names of the people of sciences and the names of the industries and the name and roles with difference, including those differences. They have readings of statutes that give the benefit of the doubt based on these people, based on this, that. All natures of differences they can't have before discerned how and where they were used remotely. All sides of cases, the private law names, the formal law names, including judges, prosecutors, and family members, at the same time with the kids of criminal enterprises and private ones, and the adults needing to use those words like kids and adults or maturity or immaturity. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrong, and searching and valuing exception nature to get away with that. That could only be, and then with demonstrations of that could only be gotten away with by them self-valuing roles with built upon predicate acts with facts into each database everyone went to, at each campus everyone went to. And for a method where it is records and measures and maintains self-valued rules too, sickly distinctly each age of fact-treating nature, assigning self-valued roles, blaming other things others ourselves. And with self-valued criminal and ceaseless natures of positive and negative treatment, different treatments. And this is forced through the people that are countering the effects of it worst, with passions and emotions dishonestly as collusion/s, relative to where and how everyone is being and has been used remotely, relative to the importance of understanding how there is a distinct identity of difference, and that's how part of how it, and what we are shown how to discern it, therefore how to teach about it, black pupils, because we aren't going to leave it out this time. We are not going to leave. We're not going to leave James Madison's communications replaced, and we are not going to. Then we're not going to treat George Washington without that, and we're not going to treat the difference. We're not going to. Our founders direct. I read that we were directed to refer to our founders plural as James Madison. Before the first president, the founders plural were using his plan, and the only extent of might they had to go against internationally monitored conversations in a whole bunch of different countries, and countries that were themselves used individually, grouped and together, hyper criminally foreign influence, collusion/s against themselves, others. The difference of that is used remotely too, right? Anywhere it would be estimated as value, or be value, even if it's not addressed. Everyone is a standing criminal insidiousness nature, where and how you have roles, denying the significance of how we have black people's rights of eye, denying the existence of the hyper-evidential, so to speak. Or Whisper Creek. It doesn't have to be formally denied. You guys know what I'm talking about. You've seen the other species' bodies. You know they have quality aspects, nature distinct, but also non-distinct, simultaneous/hyper-simultaneous. You know the nature of the debate. You know the way we had presented to us history. You know who's doing their homework or not. Get down. You guys have all natures of excuses the breaching method showed them to hide behind. And it showed them too simultaneously how they could get the effects of it through the kids The kids are going to make excuses because they've been confessed, demonstrated to them since they were kids. People offensively communicate that they're going to pretend other, but they have roles self-consciously, forcing, tricking, hurting, and persuading, while being and having been used remotely. Other things, others ourselves, blamed for things that nature itself and that our founders communicated for us to blame on a human fact, achieving nature, breaching method. A fact, a total all lies about what they think when people speaking about our potentials. Otherwise, that body is sensed, including if it is a majority of people, including if it's everybody. All right, thank you, people. Have a good day. Any pray. Please, celebrities who disbelieves. I want to talk about the World Trade Center predicate acts. WFSB, please communicate with me. Please confirm. Don't stop lying as taking collusions with a whole bunch of other people and criminal enterprises in other countries and campuses, and more child defenders, leaders of the kids. That you guys recorded, were seeking me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm, involve a whole bunch of different natures of organized crimes with you. Who, when you attach me to fake conversations with you and with others, and about the World Trade Center attack, and about legal cases with various natures of federal criminals involved with those cases, and with all sides of cases in courts with the same names involved with predicate acts with you and next to your offices. WFSB, please get the fixed and fake news and make me stop begging you to get them on paper, one name in sequence. Wethersfield police have been forging and switching names and preventing writing so they could stick fake writing in campuses and in databases, including at the Wethersfield police station. They pretended I had conversations with police there as a kid and then as an adult. And there were connections between the ones who did that, who had time collusions with the World Trade Center predicate acts, including with Saudis. They forced the collusions with the ones named Mendez, with Wethersfield Police Department, and a whole bunch of people next to and at Fox Connecticut News and Harper, Connecticut, as ones involved all along Route 3, which goes by the state judicial branch offices, and names next to it through time, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They had a whole bunch of lies influenced about me, and their roles were influenced to hide details and fake details with a whole bunch of different countries, and their roles with our own, with all kinds of natures of investigations, investigators on all sides of criminal and civil cases, the lawyers, the family members, the sources, same with the courts. You have planting the same sequence shifts, fake motivations, and screening roles with a whole bunch of other countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists at the same time. Whiting and forensics increasingly has collusions with a whole bunch of people tied to a Joshua Julian and a Robert Rodriguez, who have been planting evidences on all sides of my house with police forms and courts, and with people that my tied to my neighbors who had roles with people from other areas who had roles with home break-ins and various natures of fights between neighbors and things through the years, and roles with all sides of issues used remotely at the same time, again with the courts and the intelligence tied to them, because then everyone can't go, then everyone forward self-value, the same sequence shifts, the same uses of name. This is a breach that's paralyzing sense and sensibilities of people, where and how it keeps the difference between the branches being and haven't been criminally foreign influenced, the intelligence tied to them, foreign or domestic, the difference of that, and overt criminal enterprise, private one, terrorists, and other news and names next to them at the same time. Self-value roles with the illusions and with the demonstrations of itself by nature, instead effectively being and having been used to blame other things, others themselves, for the real worst causes, inclusion /S with it. There are whole torture, extortion, fact-checking nature, slavery methods clearer than day upon the people of the suburbs, let alone of New York City. We have forgiveness is so we can stay focused on that, and we have instant healing. We're going to address the predicate acts with facts against everyone sickly distinctly, with black people's whites of eyes, and rules with treatments of words like equality, tactical terror from how nature shows us to use these words, and as counters to the people most impositioned upon that, forced to be represented by criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, representation, and subject treatments incapable of defending that and of affording discern how nature shows us to appreciate exceptions and exception nature properly, and a special difference too. Ugh. Thank you, people. YouTuber Anthony Wall, I teach you best boxings. Who disbelieves? Let's get a celebrity with the courage to respond to the World Trade Center predicate acts instead of them screening their roles with collusions with all natures of industries with a bunch of criminal insidiousness nature fakes who and styles and needs of nature lie about their motivations when they hear people speak and they change what they say, fake what they say, and they act tied to that, tied to the predicate acts with facts and databases and all sides of cases. All kinds of evidence is racketeering, worse than war crimes, is what slavery is about too. Black people, not even a lawyer. We're gonna sweep the floors with them when they're gonna help us too, and but with judges even. Judge Napolitano will help us. He doesn't even know yet. Even the judges are being shown and have been shown fake things right through the news too. In other words, all nature's investigation. Then they make mistakes, not realizing they're not only being self-valued roles. Oh, well, that's just how it is. It's crazy. There's nothing to do. While they're being used remotely, saying that, thinking that. Their thoughts are being used remotely by pupils. It is time to free their souls who disbelieve. Don't make me beg anymore to get a name and sequence. Get me off the fake conversations with this WFSB. And get the interbranch at the same time onto paper with them, or any one of the branches. But they note that they have been forging and switching names. If someone disbelieves that, get them on paper. And if they're hiding roles with that, it's increasingly collusions with all kinds of natures of organized crimes. And their motivations too. And Anthony Agman said that they have roles with all kinds of recorded communicating on Facebook, that they have all kinds of roles with Harvard Hospital, with Social Security scams, and with doctors associated with him, with people with the name Riley, who is my algebra teacher, involved also with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, and with the religious spots, the religious differences racketeering with it, and their roles with all the different countries. And there's, it's the Jewish lobby. They're all collusions with difference together. It's not real. They're putting fake things in database, fake motivations. They're self-valuing being having been used remotely, pretended needs to pretend integrity that was never there. In other words, at countries A through Z, we have been systems tactical terror from integrity system. Black pupils who disbelieve. In other words, get them on the name and get two on name and get them two on sequence, please. Lethal IDs. All right, thank you.